A history of trauma can keep you from seeing the choices that are right in front of you. They can keep your vision really suppressed, and they can keep you too stressed out. A lot of what I teach people is first get re-regulated. It's not just emotional. It changes your vital signs, it changes your hormones, it changes your immune system. It's like a haunted subject, but it needs to be said. People are really hurting each other right now, and people are walking around traumatized, and the trauma that you're not allowed to talk about is the worst kind. That's part of what turns it into PTSD.
I mean, how do you solve this problem?
You can't change other people. It's not how it works. It works on the individual level where I learn to regulate my nervous system so that I can respond in a regulated way.
And we are live. Anna, how are you doing this fine day?
I'm good, thank you.
Glad to have you. Yeah, likewise. So we talk a lot about mindset on this podcast, and I feel like I'm always looking for experts in that field. I mean, you can have everything dialed in, but if your mind's not in the right space, then everything else is in disarray.
That is so true. Yeah.
Let me get the backstory on you. What brings you to the mindset space and dealing with, how to get past hurdles, past traumas, and just make the most of the future?
Yeah. Well, I'm somebody who kind of learned the hard way how a history of trauma can keep you from seeing the choices that are right in front of you. They can keep your vision really suppressed, and they can keep you too stressed out by people to go put yourself out there. And so a lot of my work is teaching people how to change that, how to start building up their tolerance, to feel okay with people, to be themselves, to set boundaries, to take care of themselves so that they can live the life that they were really meant to have. That's the great tragedy with early trauma, is a lot of people get suppressed under that and they never find help to get out.
I want to talk about early trauma because I feel like that's been in the limelight a lot lately.
Yeah.
And, before we recorded, I mentioned that I had just had my second son, so I don't want to screw him up, obviously, and subject him to a lot of unnecessary trauma in the home. But I feel like I've just heard a lot more of that conversation. And I don't have a rough childhood upbringing, so I didn't really carry trauma with me throughout life that I'm aware of, I guess I should say. But I'm not naive to the fact that a lot of people are dealing with that. And I like adversity. I like hardships. I like obstacles because it tests us. It gives us, adversity is necessary. You can use it as a gift, but there's a point of diminishing returns. So at what point does that come? It's probably going to be highly individualized, but what did that look like for you, I guess? Can you give me some context, and how did you overcome it?
Well, the thing that really got me was being severely neglected as a kid, as a baby and toddler. And I know you're not going to do that to your son. Even that you're thinking about, like, what can I do, is a very good sign that you're on the right track. But I grew up in a family where my parents were both alcoholic, and my mother became a pretty severe drug addict, and they split. And my mom brought in a lot of chaos into the house with, like, men and the hippie scene and a lot of things that kids aren't supposed to be exposed to that were scary for us, but also, we just had to kind of figure out life by ourselves. By the time I was a teenager, there were no adults like helping me with that or setting limits on me. And so a lot of that was the beginning of how, once I was old enough to not be traumatized by my parents, I was re-traumatizing myself. And that is so much the pattern. And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that I had these. Basically, it really is. It's an injury to the nervous system when you neglect a little kid like that. Abuse does it too. But I think the thing we really underestimated is the damaging effect of neglect. Like, babies really need a lot of, like, eye to eye, skin to skin, talking, laughing together, playing together. They need that time together. And if you had a parent who was checked out or drunk or high or depressed or mentally ill or dead or not there's a whole piece of brain development that maybe didn't happen at the right time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people, like, from the outside looking in, someone can look at someone that had a rough upbringing and they're no longer in that environment. So it's easy to assume that, okay, they've got everything solid now, they can just overcome that. Mm-hmm. But I feel like what a lot of people find themselves doing is, when that's their reality, that's what they're familiar with. So they kind of self-sabotage because that's what they know.
Well, I think that's an opinion that came from people who don't have what I have. Oh, they must be just, like, trying to self-sabotage. But I would say it's not a conscious thing. And it probably has a lot to do with the neurological injury of neglect. There's a way that the brain and nervous system react to stress when you are, when you're basically okay. Your stress response will go, oh, danger, heartbeat, get through this thing, act in a sane manner that will keep you safe and keep the whole thing from escalating. And then the whole thing subsides. But in a person who has been neglected or has this, it's called dysregulation, neurological dysregulation, that stress response comes out wonky. And so you see people who have like a hair-trigger temper. That's emotional dysregulation. And it comes from a dysregulated response to stress. Like we all feel insulted sometimes. We all feel like, we'd like to hit somebody, but we don't. But somebody who's dysregulated loses that filter, and to some degree or another. Most are not going to get violent, but when you see people getting into, street fights, domestic violence, and these things, that is the escalation of what I'm talking about. So people who were neglected in childhood, if a magic wand was waved and they had a perfect life, which is actually kind of hard to attain when you have this injury, because it's very easy to push people away with the outbursts, with the avoidant tendencies, and the strange blindness to red flags that comes up. And that has a lot to do with the brain. The brain under stress for a traumatized person, it behaves differently. The left front cortex, I'm going to really simplify it here, but left front cortex gets very active. And that's, the left front cortex gets inactive, which is reasoning. It gets very active over here in the emotional center. So somebody's being very unreasonable, not thinking, just reacting emotionally. And so it's a very damaging thing to your life. It hurts your ability to connect with other people or sustain relationships. And if you can't sustain good relationships, or all your relationships are with other messed up people who tolerate you, your life takes a very different path. And then people go, well, you're just self-sabotaging. It's like, truly, not on purpose. There's like an injury there. And so as somebody who grew up with that injury, I was going to talk therapy 3 times a week eventually. I had a very hard year when I was 30 years old, a long time ago. I'm 62 now. But I had a very hard year. A whole bunch of stuff happened at once. And the worst of it was, my mom died. That was terrible. But in the same week, I was attacked on the street by a gang, just beaten unconscious, bones broken, teeth broken. And I had terrible PTSD. 30 years ago, believe it or not, they didn't call that PTSD. They didn't think like, oh, she's not a soldier, but she still has PTSD. So I had a very predictable set of symptoms that come from a terrible event like that. I could barely function. I was freaking out all the time. I was very reactive, angry, desperate, calling people up, can you come over? And people were just sick of it. I basically alienated everybody. Nowadays, they would know that I had PTSD, and I would have been handled very different by both my doctor and my therapist. My doctor was like, here, take some benzos. And the therapist said, let's keep talking about what happened. And both of those things were probably the 2 worst things you could have done for me at that time. So I got pushed to a really bad breaking point. And that breaking point was where I ended up finding something that did work for me, that turned out to be very simple, really. But you have to keep doing it.
The talk therapy, I want to talk about what you found that worked for sure, but it's interesting. I just got to record a podcast about, fertility, totally different subject, but
Yeah.
a lot of people that have infertility and miscarriages, like they go through talk therapy, and more often than not, the stats show that doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
So where is the big hole in talk therapy? Why is it so prevalent, and why is it so ineffective for many?
Well, I have some opinions, but I'll first tell you what is backed up by science. And that is that talking about it has certain triggers along the neural pathway for talking about traumatic experiences. It is now well known that a significant portion of people who have been through trauma will feel worse if they talk about it. We just have had this cultural assumption, oh, you got to talk about it. You got to go talk to somebody. Go talk to a therapist about it. Oh, tell me about your childhood. It was just totally the paradigm. And that's changing now, not as fast as it should, in my opinion. But it was like this sacred cow that talking about it is what you do. And if it was freaking you out to talk about it, like the therapist who I had, she was a professor at a prestigious institution. She knew what she was trained to do, but she was pushing me to talk about the traumatic experiences, even though it was making me cry and shake and kind of lose my ability to focus or remember what I was talking about, I'd have to go sit in my car for 45 minutes afterwards. So we have a word for that now. It's dysregulation. I was very, very dysregulated, and it's normal. It's not everybody who's had trauma, but even, some of the opinions I have is I do think the premise of focusing on the past and what other people did, it does need to happen. This part of telling the truth and having a witness and getting some validation and maybe some insight about that, that's important, but it's not going to lead you to healing. It's just not. You're going to have to change your life. And if you grew up in a family that was just full of like drugs and violence, I was a good kid and I had many accomplishments, but I had no knowledge of how to live life like a person who has their head together. And I didn't like people who had their head together. I always thought they were judging me, and I had a lot of things between me and success at the time. So a lot of what I teach people is first get re-regulated, then start changing your life. And one of the intermediary steps right there is being able to connect with people, to get through that immense stress and dysregulation that gets triggered by just being around people. And I want to qualify, when I say trigger, I'm not talking about all the ways that people use that word. I specifically mean a stimulus that makes you get dysregulated again.
Yeah.
And
Out of
dysregulation,
curiosity,
it's not just emotional. It changes your vital signs, it changes your hormones, it changes your immune system, and it affects your behavior, your cognition. It can give you brain fog. It's a really pervasive condition, and you can learn to get re-regulated, which is incredibly powerful.
I feel like nowadays people are starting to open their eyes to the reality that you can't really separate the brain and the body. Like if something's going on in the brain, it's having a physiological impact that manifests itself through, nervous system state, blood sugar. I mean, like there's so many
Yeah.
intricacies that take a part. When it comes to just the current state of society, have you seen an increase, or like what is the trend going? Because it
It's
seems
so
like
much worse. I'm
it
sure
seems
you've noticed it too.
yeah, I mean, and
It
just
is
like
so
from a
much
neglect
worse.
standpoint, I mean,
Yeah.
with a stat of more than 50% of marriages ending in divorces,
Yeah.
I would assume neglect is just going to come kind of as a default because so many broken homes exist now.
True. That is true. Also, a lot of people are medicated legally and otherwise, and then how many of us are not totally absorbed in screens?
Yeah,
It's literally a form of neglect. I'm so glad my kids are bigger now so that I don't have to feel guilty about how much I look at screens now for their sake. But
yeah.
even when they were kids, we didn't have smartphones. My kids are 22 and 26 right now, two sons. And I was a divorced mom when they were little. They were like 1 and 4 when I got divorced, when their dad left. And so for me to manage getting home from a full day working, getting them from their daycare, trying to get them fed, deal with homework, bathing, tidying up, staying sane, you know.
Hmm.
And I use these techniques of writing and meditation and have for 30 years. And so I taught my kids to meditate with me and just kind of, cuddle up while we did that. So that worked well. But it was just a lot for me to manage. And I couldn't possibly be as present as was right, as really was their birthright to have somebody that present. Now, their dad was still in their life and they'd be over at his house 3 nights a week. We'd alternate. And so they had a lot of time with their parents who loved them. But it was, it was a divorce. It was rocky. It was a lot of time in daycare, cheap daycare, that I could afford. And I wish I could do that again. But I did what I had to do. I just did what I had to do. So they luckily were very, very loved. There was no doubt. They had a really different childhood from me. And they learned how to use these techniques that I use to re-regulate. They know what regulation is. They know how to recognize it in themselves. And they're fairly regulated people. They have all the same challenges that anybody has in life. They're just people, but I do feel that I gave them this tool. I don't think regulation has been recognized at all as a factor in a lot of problems you see. So, what's going on in our culture? Well, there's this social permission to just go scream in people's faces. I'm appalled by it. Not only is that harmful and dangerous and risks things breaking out into violence, just obvious things, but the person who's yelling is jacking up their nervous system so bad. And in some sort of misguided belief that this is going to bring emotional relief from whatever it is that they're upset about. Screaming in people's faces does not have a great track record of bringing about solutions. It just doesn't. And then people who get screamed at, I think the way that this has divided everybody, and the equivalent online, I will get, we're going to put this online and people will say awful things to me. They'll do that. And my nervous system will go, ugh, about that. And then I'll sort of say, okay, but this is what I do for a living. I'll just take it in stride. But
You
it
think
does
people are
hurt
more apt to scream at one another in real life because
in
it's
real
much
life
easier
and
to
in
do it online?
online. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a YouTuber. So today I had somebody was like, this bitch is an idiot. She doesn't know anything and blah, blah, blah. And some opinion about something they thought I said or meant or anything. It wasn't even relevant to me. Who knows? But even when I'm just like, just get that person off the channel, there's a little bit, my nervous system has to be like, ugh. I was,
Well,
I was
you're
exposed to
definitely
violence as a kid. I will always react to abuse. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's just human nature. Like
Yeah.
nobody likes to be belittled or talked down to, and people just do it so
Yeah.
flippantly online.
Yeah.
And what's unfortunate is that it takes a lot of courage to start putting yourself out online. Like when I first started YouTubing and podcasting, I mean, it's scary. I mean, you're just
Yeah.
totally throwing yourselves to the wolves.
Yeah.
And the people that are making these comments, I mean, they typically have no following. They have no content that they're putting out. They're just simply casting negativity.
They're
And
anonymous.
yeah, it's so unfortunate. And I mean,
Yeah.
you're saying something that people are, needing to hear because you've
Yeah.
amassed a significant following on YouTube. So like
Mhm.
you're gaining traction because people are finding value in what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, when people complain about what I'm saying, a lot of it is like fair. They could just say, I disagree with you. My experience is this. You're talking like da, 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 da. And I'm like, all right, that's fair. That's not abuse. That's
Mhm.
debate. I don't always want to debate with everybody. I'm just like, go to another YouTube channel, but okay, fair. you know.
Mhm.
But it's just flat out abuse, saying horrible things. And it can be so funny. I commented on a post on Substack a while back, and this whole like chain of people came and attacked me and said, I think I had mentioned I was a divorced mom, and I was a divorced mom who worked very hard and didn't get child support. I don't mention that though. It's like it's old news. Who cares? Everything's fine now. And somebody said, well, you're obviously just one of those gold diggers who got pregnant on purpose to try to get some money out of a man. And I was just like, no. But you
Mhm.
can't
Yeah,
fight
people
with
don't
them.
know. People
First, I
just
tried to
assume.
defend myself, and then they said, oh, you're obviously one of those feminazis who thinks that she can control men. I was just like, okay.
You
I'm just
can't
going
win.
to
I mean,
leave
like
here.
it's some of those people are not even worth engaging with because it's
No,
just
they're not, I don't think
yeah.
abusive people are worth engaging with, except up to a point. Sometimes I think as a society, we can't just put up with endless abuse.
Yeah.
This is doing horrible harm to people, to the social relationships, to our ability to go home for Thanksgiving, to just being able to keep the same friends for years, being afraid to express yourself with other people. So it's a trauma. It's an ongoing trauma right now. We're all going through a mass trauma with it. You're not allowed to talk about it really, and that mimics narcissistic abuse from like the archetype of the bully dad. The drill sergeant dad who's like hits you. I didn't have that. My parents didn't hit me, but the archetype, we've seen it in movies. You hit them, and then you say, if you tell anybody, I'm going to hit you again, and this time, it's going to be worse. And so
Mhm.
you learn, like, it didn't happen. I'm very quiet. I'm going along with it. The evil spirits always come and turn everything off if I start telling the truth about stuff like this.
Totally.
I swear, the screens fall off the windows, everything. It's like a haunted subject, but it needs to be said. Like, people are really hurting each other right now, and people are walking around traumatized. And the trauma that you're not allowed to talk about is the worst kind. That's part of what turns it into PTSD. And if you are free to sort of process it in your own way, talk when you're ready, not talk when you don't want to talk about it, your nervous system has a chance to handle it. But this trauma isn't stopping right now. I know everybody's hurting with it. I feel like everybody feels pain about all the discord and the division amongst people. My own parents, they argued about politics like to the point of violence.
Mhm.
And so I used to think, I don't know, people have said, oh, well, that's, So you're just triggered by that. And it's like, no, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's not a good society when it comes to that point. Every war that's ever started starts like this. And so I feel it's really imperative to learn how to bring the temperature down within our own bodies so that we can deal with things sanely. And a lot of people first are scared to hear that when I recommend it about first of all, it's not my fault. It's like, well, how we respond with our nervous system affects the role that we're going to play in some conflict, whether you bump into somebody on the sidewalk or, something's come up at work or your relationship is failing. Your nervous system's strength and bounciness is everything right there, instead of it being brittle and being like, one false move and I will just turn into a monster, screaming and tolerating nothing, and all my worst reflexes are coming out. And trauma reactions that come out for people, they might freeze up, they might just run away, storm out the door, make threats like, I'm never coming back. And they're coming back, but they're doing that much damage in that moment. Or I quit, or and then also fighting, just getting into a yelling match with people. And I'm just astonished. I've been around on Earth for a while, and I have seen the change in the way people get into a yelling match. I was at Trader Joe's a couple months ago, and I was standing next to a woman, and we were both looking at the same yogurts or something. And I reached up to get a yogurt, and I said, "Excuse me," because my hand was going to sort of cross over just a little bit towards her area. I said, "Excuse me," and I grabbed the yogurt. She just started screaming at me. And like what her nervous system told her is that I totally disrespected her. Nobody cares. I work with people with trauma so much. I know what's going on here.
So what do you think?
But when she's screaming at me, it was really hard for me to stay calm,
Yeah.
I did. And I was like, I'm just going to say things. I'm sorry. I meant no disrespect. I'll wait. But it was too late for her. She was just off and going. And she was just spouting all this belief that, that I had this intention to harm her. That kind of thing is what's happening all the time.
So how do you solve this problem? This is like deep-rooted generational stuff. How do you solve this problem?
Well, I have a little bit of a contrary opinion. I think all trauma is generational. Come on. Especially childhood trauma. It's all generational. But sometimes when we focus on the past so much, like, oh, it's from the previous generation or, 150 years ago, that's one way you can take your attention off the one thing that you can change, which is right now in yourself. You can't change other people. People all the time, they're going, people should not be allowed to act that way. And I agree, they shouldn't be allowed to, but I don't propose that we have police roaming behind them all day long, locking them up if they act out. That's not how it works. It works on the individual level where I learn to regulate my nervous system so that I can respond in a regulated way, or fake it if I have to. We all have to fake it sometimes, so that I'm not adding fuel to the fire. I'm not meeting, verbal violence with verbal violence. I'm just being sane. Like sometimes the same thing with a person who's yelling is to just say, oh, sorry, and back out of there. When your nervous system is working for you, it's telling you when you're in danger. It's telling you when there's actually a threat versus when somebody's just being rude. Trauma really gets those very mixed up, and traumatized people will end up tolerating all kinds of terrible treatment because they're having trouble discerning, this is unacceptable. I should get out of here. And then likewise, overreacting and, blowing up at somebody for a small slight. So when your nervous system is re-regulated, you can tell the difference. You can read the scale of how serious is this? How dangerous? Can I afford to let it blow over? Can I turn the other cheek? And different situations call for a different response. And this is where people will try to argue with me about it. You shouldn't use peace tactics on this. I told a story about this. A woman tried to take the parking space that my husband had been waiting for. We were in the car. He pulls into the parking space and she just starts screaming and honking at him. And he said, well, sorry, we were waiting here for 10 minutes. So we went in. And then I found out from him when he was inside, we were in some food market thing, very fancy up in Napa. It turns out she had a stroller. She was with a friend. They both had strollers with little kids in them. And she was pretending she was accidentally knocking him in the back of his legs, walking behind him. She went to the trouble to follow him around and then act like, oops, I'm just bumping into you. So I told the story of how he was so gracious. He just turned around and he smiled. He goes, "What are you doing? Come on, is this about the parking lot?" And he ended up diffusing it, and they had a laugh together, and it stopped. And I was so proud of that. I think that's very well done. It's the right thing to do. But a whole bunch of people in my comments said, "You should have called police. Her kids should have been taken by CPS." And I thought, well, I've done a disservice if I've made it sound like it was that violent. It wasn't. It was more like bump, bump. It was
Yeah.
rude. It was rude. And I dread to think how her poor kid is going to grow up. But you don't take the kids away over that.
Yeah,
And
I feel like
anybody who's ever been involved in juvenile justice will be like, oh, yeah, you don't, that's not the solution to
I feel
things
like
that are not life threatening.
yeah, for
Yeah.
me, I got really big into like Stoic thinking a couple years
Mhm.
back, and that to me was super insightful because it's like, look,
Yeah.
you can't always control the environmental factors or what comes into your circle, but you have
Yes.
complete control over how you manage your emotions in reaction to those things.
Yeah.
And like that is just way more empowering. It puts the ball back in your court, and it's not to say that you shouldn't have emotion or that you shouldn't feel a certain way, but how you respond in light of whatever the situation is
Yeah.
totally within your control. And that to me, like when I flipped that switch, it was like, okay, I am
Well,
the master
yeah.
of this situation.
It's totally under your control unless you have a damaged nervous system that prevents you from being able to control your reactions.
So
So
how do
that's where
you, yeah, how do you deal
you
with
have to
that?
learn. It's not a natural process that was just given to you by proper parenting. So you have to learn, but you can learn. I've learned and I teach other people how to do it. And my book from last year, Re-Regulated, it's like the book on what's going on and you're in there when you're reacting, why it goes so far off the charts for traumatized people and why the old approach to treating traumatized people never dealt with dysregulation. But dysregulation is everything. If you can't get dysregulated, you can't you can't try any kind of like method of getting better. Nothing will stick. It looks like a learning disability. It looks like a hysterical emotional person. It looks like all these things that it's not. But your ability to reason and think and pay attention and remember and focus and regulate your emotions and read reality accurately is all damaged. So you teach yourself, everybody needs a method to re-regulate. So a lot of people, like, are you into like working out or sports, stuff like
Yeah,
that?
I do
Yeah.
a little bit of working out from time to time.
Yeah, I know. I have before too. But when I do it, I feel better. I feel calmer emotionally because it's re-regulating.
Hmm.
And so we work out for many reasons, but one of the reasons is emotional health. And if I were to tell people one thing you can do about dysregulation, it is to move your body in the way that you're able. And if you hate the gym or you can't deal with it right now, just go like I did this last night. I was just feeling really sluggish. I had to get something done. So I went out and I just like cleaned up leaves off the street. There's tons of them right now, dead leaves all over the street. And I was like, okay, I'll just clean up the leaves. And then I felt really good and I got back to work. I was able to come back and focus, but I got to move my body sometimes. Our sedentary lifestyle, I think, has taken something away. Those Stoics, when they were like, control your thoughts, well, even when somebody was coming at them with a sword, they had a chance to like be in a battle and like use their body and work it off. That whole stress response needs to go somewhere. So movement is super positive that we can do. So a lot of people find that movement that involves other people is even stronger. Movement that involves coordinated movements, like if you were all doing a routine, like I used to go to kickboxing class. That was really good because we would all do the exact same kick at the same time. And movement where you're crossing the midline of your body, your right hand's over here. It made me realize like the hokey pokey, super regulating. I've had my
Hmm.
students like, everybody up out of your chairs, we're going to do the hokey pokey. And I'm like, notice, how is that? So you can do that. Some stuff is like just like way out of left field, but it works like EMDR. And it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And you can get your brain like sort of back online by moving your eyes back and forth. Who'da thunk? And the woman who invented it, she was just like taking a walk, looking at trees, and she was like, boy, that really calmed me down. So now it's a treatment and it's clinically validated. It doesn't work for every problem, not less effective for long ago childhood trauma, but great. Like when I got that assault that I lived through, when I eventually got EMDR for that, my whole reaction, Until I had that EMDR, I would go into adrenaline, cortisol every time I thought about it. And that just went away. It became a memory, but no body reaction to it anymore. And that's
Mhm.
ideal. That's called a processed trauma. That's processed. So you want those. For me, the strongest axis that I can re-regulate myself on, where the biggest amount of trouble is in my cognitive, my thinking, my emotions and thinking, the constant inner monologue I have when I'm stressed out, where I'm just like, oh, everybody sucks. They're all against me. I'm no good anyway. And I never get a fair chance. And I have so much to do. There's all this negativity is going all the time. So a lot of mindset stuff is trying to address that. But for people who are working with that neurological change of early trauma, it's just a harder leap to make, to just decide to fix it. So you can write it. My whole technique is about you write your fearful, resentful thoughts and feelings on paper. I learned to do it in a prayer structure. It was like asking God, here, God, I have this on my mind. Take it from me. Show me what you want me to be doing and give me the power to do it. It's a very simple prayer. It sounded crazy to me when I first started doing it 31 years ago. I was very acculturated to believe that sort of thing is total bullshit. But I was desperate for help. My friend said, well, give it a try, see what you think. And within 2 weeks, I didn't have depression or PTSD anymore. And I say that qualifying it. I was never diagnosed with PTSD and I was never undiagnosed because it simply wasn't recognized at the time that that's
Yeah.
what it was. But it was obviously what I had. A lot of times people who had childhood trauma, when an adult trauma comes along, it sort of lets out the old trauma that they were compartmentalizing fairly successfully. So there's this old idea like, oh, nothing should ever be suppressed. You have to access all your memories as soon as possible, and then you should cry about them. I don't think that's necessarily right. I think they will come in time, but trying to artificially crack the nut and force them out is not something that's totally safe for traumatized people. That
I
it's
feel
okay
like,
to compartmentalize until you're
yeah,
ready.
I feel like so much of this stuff is kind of at a head right now because we're living such a unrecognizable reality from what we as a species have done for who knows how many. I mean, like when I'm talking to people about biohacking, for instance, they'll have all this, tools and gadgets and ways to get back in tune with circadian rhythm and, breathe better. And these are all things that we would have done by default by being outside, by waking up with the sun, without
Yeah,
artificial lights, without social media, without screens, being
yeah,
interacting with people. Like that would all happen by default.
yeah.
Being in close relationship with God and giving some of your things up to Him. Like that's something that was done on the regular back before. And now it's like people are so isolated and what they gravitate to is just so removed from what
Yeah.
would be a healthy outlet. And I feel like there's going to have to be some type of, I don't know, implosion for people to correct course
Oh,
almost.
I know. I hope not. I try to think of a better way.
I do too.
It's
I don't like being pessimistic, but it's like, man, we're not trending in a good direction right now.
Yeah, like if there were an electromagnetic pulse
Yeah.
attack or something, at least we wouldn't be on screens, but but we wouldn't have food either. So yeah, there's these problems. But we have to, what we can do as individuals is try to make these changes on our own. And I don't know, a lot of these things are fads. I don't know how important they are. But if I had to pick two important things, there's move your body
Hmm.
and stay connected with people. I see this very disturbing trend. And, I coach people about dating all the time. And I've been, how long I've been coaching? I don't know, 8 years or something. And even in that time, it's changed so much, the pandemic. But this thing where if somebody's not interested in dating anymore, they block the person. And they think that I'm old fashioned because I'm like, can't you just not, decide you're not dating anymore? I don't recommend trying to stay friends or anything, but the blocking thing, like I
Yeah.
would do to somebody who was a stalker. And it tends to go along with this belief system that, oh, it didn't work out, therefore they're a narcissist, or therefore they're bad, and therefore they've done something wrong. And the whole thing of dating is meant to be this process of getting to know somebody to see if they would be somebody you would like to get to know better, and then
Hmm.
progressing down towards, would you like to make a life with them, form a family with them? But as soon as you just turn a first date into sex, the whole apple cart is all over the place. All the stuff in your body is attaching, bonding, and then you're overriding it with this idea like I have to be cool about it, I can't expect anything, and or I can dislike this person but take the sex and all this stuff that I think jams the radar so bad. It's a drug, really. I think romantic excitement, sex, certainly porn, is just more ways to sort of escape the anxiety we feel and try to get a hit of dopamine or whatever it is, the magic drug where we just feel like placated for a second. And when people are getting used in that way, nothing good ever comes of it.
Yeah,
Nothing good comes of it.
I agree. I feel like there's this massive lack of legitimate deep self-awareness right now. People
Mhm.
don't know who they really are or what they're capable of, and therefore they lack a certain degree of self-confidence and the
Mhm.
ability to move forward in life with transparency and authenticity.
Mhm.
And how does one go from, just assuming that the world is out to get them, that everybody else is wrong,
Mhm.
which may be the case, to also being self-aware enough to like look in the mirror and be like, hey, of all these problems that I'm dealing with, I seem to be the common denominator. So maybe I'm to
Yeah.
blame here. Like, how does one juggle that dichotomy?
That is the truth. And like radical responsibility is a very good thing to do. And it's easy to go too far. It is nobody's fault that they were, abused as a kid. It's the person who did the abuse, it's their fault. But here we are. Nobody's going to fix it for us. And therefore, I think this focus on other people and what they did is a waste of energy after a certain point. And I don't mean to knock all therapy. There's so many different kinds, and it is really important to talk to somebody. And especially, I think, like people who are professional helpers, a lot of it depends on their unique special gifts. And some people are so incredibly gifted at this. But there's, when it gets like stuck in this kind of technique, like one thing when I used to do therapy that they wouldn't give me was moral feedback. Going, are you kidding? No, you can't. That's a terrible person thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like chasing somebody else's partner, just doing my best,
Yeah.
for it. And I would go to the therapist and we'd be like, draw a picture about it, talk about it. How do I feel about it? But when a woman came into my life who was this very scrappy former street person, 23-year-old covered in tattoos, and she was a recovering alcoholic. She was in my theater group. And when I confided in her that I was in dire straits, that I didn't feel like I could go on, I didn't know her very well. And for some reason, I picked her to tell. She very casually said, "Oh, come in, let's talk about it." Oh, I know. But I think this is what I love about people in AA, even though I never had the privilege of being an alcoholic amongst them. That wasn't my problem. I certainly had them all in my life, and I went to that program. But what I love about alcoholics is they recognize that it's life and death to stop, blaming all your circumstances and people, and to find out where you're making a mistake and setting it right. That you go out and you face the harms that you've done, and you go apologize and make restitution. And it's taken very seriously as a life and death matter for yourself, for your own ability to hold your head up and survive. So luckily, because of her showing me the techniques, her techniques saved my life. This writing, she also told me meditate afterwards, 20 minutes of meditation afterwards. So that gave me a footing where I wasn't like freaked out all the time. Like if I had a soundtrack for how it used to feel before I had these techniques, it was like this, just going through life, just completely freaked out.
Yeah.
And I didn't start out that way. I was a, fairly competent, intelligent person, but I had a lot of stuff working against me. And then I messed everything up, like traumatized people do, just treated other people badly, got into ridiculous relationships, very self-centered, really, like an alcoholic.
So do you
But
feel like the reason the alcoholics see success is because they view it as a life and death situation? Do you feel like a lot of people are stuck because they don't put it on enough of a pedestal to recognize it as life or death?
Well, I can give you my opinion about it, and because my family's riddled with alcoholism, like more than half of the members of my family and extended family have it or are already dead from it, and drugs like heroin. I just come from a family with a high addiction rate that somehow I didn't get that aspect of it. No physical addiction. I have cigarettes. Got over it, but I do understand. I understand what alcoholism is like up close, like very, very deeply. And I've had a couple of relationships with people who were in active addiction in the past. And so this is what I would say. I think it's human nature to really struggle to face honestly where you're making a mistake. Like our human nature, it just wants to blame. We just love to blame. It's so comforting. It's like, well, how can I get a job in this economy? Or, you know, how can I, sustain a relationship when men are all just awful? That kind of thing. And those were two trauma-driven beliefs that I had that were really holding me back. My antipathy towards men was not attractive to good men. There were some who would put up with it, but they were high, you know?
Mhm.
And I had no idea, like nobody called me on it. Nobody called me on it. In fact, I think that I had some therapists who were like on board with it. And it's just a luck of the draw who you get. So I had to make a conscious decision, and I read the Stoics too, and I read St. Thomas Aquinas, and I read religious texts about everything. I learned 7 forms of meditation before I settled on one of them. But I got to a point where I knew I was going to die if I didn't change my life, that my life wasn't worth going on with when all I did was alienate people and feel angry and miserable all the time. And I wanted something better. And I kind of had a spiritual experience one day where I just sort of was given to understand that I was meant for something better, and it was time. It was time to like just put all this behind me and do something different. And a lot of what that involved is being willing. This is something I learned from the drunks too. They have this saying, I was willing to go to any lengths. Like that's the key. Are you willing to go to any lengths to change? Or are you still holding on to it's like, well, but it's not fair. Like, so I'm married and you have a family, so I guess you're
Mhm.
married too. And those days when you're just like, well, maybe it's just me, where you're just like, oh, everything's so messed up. If only my spouse weren't causing all my problems. I get this very blamey mindset. And that's when my spiritual and mental condition is weak and I'm dysregulated. And I'm also, traumatized people, we get emotional flashbacks sometimes. Some old like emotional thing just coming and wafts in and paints everything black. You're like, see, I have to do everything around here. Nobody will ever help me. That's like one of my loops. I know what it is now. So if I hear myself thinking that way, I know not to do it. Or my other one is, I don't need you. I don't need anybody. Every relationship I ever had where I ended up saying such things ended. Hello, like
Mhm.
that's a very dark place to be coming from. But I believed it when it was happening. And so to undo that, I had to work on myself and then get the result of noticing that people cared about me. I think a lot of advice that people get is backwards. Like you have to love yourself before you can love somebody else. But I think it's most people's experience that we do love other people before we love ourselves, if we have that problem. And so there's this, like, I just call it normal people advice. You have to love yourself before you can love somebody else. I understand the point. I understand that you can't go in with low self-esteem and expect a great relationship. But the thing is, when you grew up not cared for, you're just going to not love yourself. It's a wound that you're carrying. And how you're going to learn to love yourself is through being loving to others and then living in such a way that you feel good about yourself. And over time, you start going, I feel pretty good. I did clean up all my messes. I was honorable in all the situations that I found myself in. When I couldn't figure out what to do and I messed things up, I went back and apologized. That's when I started feeling good about myself. And I think that's really underrated. And people are going to complain in the comments and be like, oh, you're blaming the victim. I'm not. I'm not. But if you want to stop being a victim, you're going to have to like start taking action. People are not going to cooperate with your fantasy that everybody's going to stop hurting you.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people get hung up on the time of adherence to create the outcome they desire. But I mean, you can have the mental shift relatively quickly if you're in the right headspace, but like to have that manifest through your daily compounding actions is where the magic happens. And so many people, I mean, especially in today's day and age, the instant gratification, that dopamine hit that you're referring to earlier, it's like
Yeah.
people, if there's any long game approach to it, they just throw up their hands in defeat.
Yeah.
But like the time is going to pass anyways. Like life goes on. And if
Yeah.
you're here on this life, you might as well make compounding actions that lead to your betterment as opposed to your demise.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very sober thought you have right there. But it's very hard to learn when you feel emotionally like you're drowning and everything feels like it's like this second or death, like it's just got to make it better this second or death. So I think that's the lens I bring. I have a knack for explaining. This is what it feels like. what you see on the outside is this. It doesn't always match, but it explains a lot why people can be so unreasonable, why they're screaming at each other. And a lot of stuff that we're doing, I think time will show us. People know this already, but like if you're looking at a screen, and especially like inflammatory stuff online, which most of it, if it's not there to make you angry, it's there. Yeah, there's this thing on that's really bothering me. I see online a lot. It's like this, I call it sentimental porn. It's these posts that are fake. You can see they're AI generated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Rusty was a cowboy and everybody thought he was just a loser, but one day there was this lost child and he was the only one who persisted in finding the kid, and then he did, and it's some AI video of the cowboy and the child. And I'm just like, this is fake. This is fake. And then everybody chimes in and goes, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. I have serious reservations about where this is going, where we activate our love and sympathy and admiration for robots, but
Yeah.
not people. Maybe
Yeah.
it's good that we're sort of practicing that muscle, but
Yeah. I feel like we're very disconnected from reality and truth. Like we all have our own perspective, and perspective is your reality to some extent. But like there are certain like black and white truths in the world. And I feel like
yeah.
the more we step away from that, the more chaos we're bound to encounter.
Yes. So that's why I wrote the book Connectability. That connecting with people with your heart is necessary to human flourishing, but also to your own life. And so I started focusing on this because I realized I love YouTubing because people talk to you all day long about how they feel about what you just said. So I've learned a lot about the variations of trauma and stuff that's not that varied. And almost everybody with trauma feels like they can't connect with people. And I sure did. I just never felt like I fit in. And then later, like I met this, I left high school a year early. I was like a punk rocker. I graduated early. I left. I never talked to anybody ever again. And then Facebook came out and I reconnected with like the most popular girl in school, and I ended up visiting her. And we had this heart to heart. And she's like, remember, we used to have those boonie parties out in the boonies. And I was like, no, Amber, I was never invited to those. And she
Mm-hmm.
goes, yes, you were. Everybody liked you, Anna. You were always just like so ooh, about it. So I had sort of pulled away from people, and that's the prototype. That's what a traumatized person does. Is it's so stressful and brings up so much fear and anxiety and anger just dealing with people that it feels necessary to hold them at arm's length. So you can simultaneously just feel like, why don't I have more friends? I'm so lonely, and be like, oh, these people, I'm holding them back. And how it shows up in adult life, just in the lives of regular people, is looking at your phone all the time, being busy all the time, committing to a plan and then canceling at the last minute, going to a party late, leaving early, I use this example because it's very tangible. You go to a potluck and everybody brought like some chicken, a salad, and you bring a bag of chips. That's actually like a holding people at arm's length thing. It's not investing in your relationships with people. And I totally understand some people, it's a time in their life where they don't have the money or the time to bring more than a bag of chips. But I just was somebody who never brought an entree. And I just realized this is ridiculous. I have to like stand up and like be one of the people. If I want to feel like one of the people, I got to bring some chicken.
Do you feel like people do that, whether consciously or subconsciously, to just avoid embarrassment if it's like let down, or so to speak?
Yeah, I'm sure that's an exception though. Yes. It could be embarrassing to bring the wrong thing or not to know the appropriate thing to bring once. I have potluck wounds too. Once this neighborhood, I did a video about this neighborhood and all the moms who bullied me in this neighborhood, but there was a potluck. It was a brunch. And I bought 2 pounds of bacon. Now remember, I was a single mom, so 2 pounds of bacon, it was pretty generous for what I could afford. And I fried it all up and I brought it over there hot. And everybody, it was the first thing to get eaten. But the hostess said, bacon? You brought bacon? And they had all like baked muffins and done all the things that
Hey,
somebody who's
bacon be
not
the way
like,
to go, in my opinion.
I know, the bacon, give me the bacon. Everyone loved it. But it was like this, I had made a faux pas. And that was a very hard thing about being a divorced mom, is you just can't do all the mom things that the other moms do. You can't compete. So there's like this league of single moms who are like, I got your back, honey. I'll bring something for both of us.
Yeah.
if you can connect with them. But between my trauma, I would carry around this belief like, oh, they don't like me. Women don't like me. All women are mean, or it's all because I'm a single mom. Not all my problems were because I was a single mom. It was a card that I played for my own benefit, not so much socially, but just to excuse myself. It's why I was late for everything. I just wasn't functioning at a level I was capable of. And I was doing things like if you're late to everything, including work all the time, it hurts your progress. It just does. And it hurts your self-esteem. It changes how people see you. So it's just stuff like that, little things like that need to be cleared up. And I say that with absolute understanding that in hard circumstances, we can't do everything perfectly. I do know that. I care about people a lot, and I get that part. But then there's this line where we just start hiding behind that thing. Really, I avoided people. I avoided being close to them because they stressed me out. I avoided dating nice people when I was young because nice men, proper men, who were appropriate and capable. I avoided it because it made me anxious to be around them. I was so sure they were judging me or that they didn't understand. And so I would end up going for somebody impossible just to be comfortable in that moment. But the long-term price, boy, you want to mess up your life long-term and into the next generation, like get into a relationship with somebody who's not suitable.
Yeah.
That's how you make generational trauma.
Yeah. That's no bueno. No bueno.
Yeah. But hey, it's easy to do.
So break down this new book. Like how is it
Yeah.
structured? How is it actionable for people?
Well, I guess the cool thing about now is my audience is so much bigger, the ones who feel disconnected.
Yeah.
I was always talking to the traumatized people, but it's more than that. Like so many people are on the spectrum, or they're introverted, or because of the pandemic, or because of division or family breakdown, they're having trouble having good friendships. Or, I do a lot of material on dating, but this book is about relationships in general. It applies to all relationships. And so first I talk about, yes, if you've been through a lot, you have this dysregulated nervous system and people are just too triggering. And so you simultaneously want them, but you can't deal with them. So I walk people through a pretty rigorous self-evaluation. Are you unconsciously holding people at arm's length? And, we do that with anger. We do that with fawning on people. That's, when you're just like, oh, I want you to like me. And so everything you say is so charming and funny, and I'll just laugh and I'll just go along with everything you say. You're not actually present. That's not a person. So becoming a person who is connectable. I made up this word a long time ago, long before I wrote the book. Why are some people so connectable? They just walk into the room and people are like, oh, hey. And it just goes easily from there. And I would walk into a room and just feel like, okay, act normal, be appropriate, smile, put on a face, go talk to people, and then leave the party going, oh, I talked about myself the whole time. And, I never want to go. And anyway, I don't like those people. It would just be this big negative for me. So that was me being avoidant. And so for me, it was the process of healing. It's not a hack. It's not this one thing. It is a way of life, like you say. It's a lot of little things over time where I'm cleaning up my own side of the street. I'm being self-reflective about things I want to work on this time. Actually thinking about, like, before I would go to a social situation, what are some things I want to do better in this social interaction? And then afterwards, checking in with myself and doing a gut check. How was that for me? And noticing, just getting the presence of mind to notice the difference between when I wasn't very conscious of how I was acting, and then when I made an effort to listen more, but not be a doormat and bring some chicken, so to
Or
speak.
bacon.
But just show up, to show up and do my best and not walk in with a chip on my shoulder that this is all going to go bad and nobody really likes me. And that it just changes everything very quickly, but it doesn't, well, not everything. Some areas of my life were very slow to change. Some were easy to change. But I found that the word being present, there are two words that I used to think were psychobabble 30 years ago. One was boundaries and one was being present.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, hippies. But boundaries are really important. You can't really be close to people if you can't trust yourself to get out of there if it gets weird. That's all. You
Yeah.
just have to be kind of clear with yourself. How am I going to exit if I don't like the way things are going from a party, a date, a Christmas gathering, whatever it is? What am I going to do about that? People get mixed up. They think boundaries are this thing. You go, don't do this, don't do that, don't say this around me. That's not a boundary. That's a request or a preference around people that you may or may not get their cooperation with. Usually not. So a boundary is what you're willing to do to just not deal with what you're not willing to deal with. And the more you can be elegant with boundaries rather than punishing about them, the better relationships you're going to have. You want to be able to have boundaries in a relationship that with somebody you want in your life. Just be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that right now. How about if we do this instead? That there's this friendly alternative. Boundaries it's just merely knowing what you're up for and what you're not. And then a big problem for being able to connect with people is when your life is populated by troubled people and mean people. And people with trauma have a lot of this. And I think people on the autism spectrum have a lot of this too. They have people who are cruel to them, but they haven't yet done anything about it. I think many of us have had this experience. And so we start to let those relationships go, and if necessary, actively cut off those relationships. The loneliness is so great in so many of us that we don't have the nerve to cut off relationships. It's like, but that's my Tuesday evening buddy, and so what if they put me down and I always come out of it depressed and, can't get to work on time the next day because I'm so down. That's all I've got. So there's this leap of faith that you have to make when you're ready to make a change. And the book is full of these self-evaluation exercises where you look at like who in your life is really bringing you down consistently. I had tons of those people. I had people who put me down, people who I always felt bad about myself afterwards, people I was ashamed for other people to know I hung out with them or was dating, that kind of thing. It all had to go. One of the best pieces of advice I got from somebody was, if I wanted to become emotionally available for a proper relationship, a proper romantic relationship, I needed to let go of all these quasi relationships in my life. So it was just things where one person was attracted and the other wasn't. But, we could hang out and watch movies or do fun things together so that we weren't alone. And then whoever had the attraction would have to completely suppress themselves and act cool. And the whole thing is just prefaced on it's manipulation going both ways. You stay in
Yeah.
my life and I'll let you adore me, or, the vice versa. It's a manipulation. It's not an honest relationship. And so I was advised, let all that go. And I thought, really? Oh, I can't. I'll have nobody. I'll never have a boyfriend. And it wasn't long after I did that like the one person, my now husband, showed up in my life. It's almost as if my light could not shine when I was just like spilling it out all over all these things that were going nowhere. I just had to just sit there with all that light and potential in me and make a decision. I'm just not going to have relationships with people who aren't suitable for me to stay with. It can only lead to one thing, failure,
Well, I feel like
And
the more unapologetically you
yeah,
are, the more like-minded people who appreciate you for who you are will come into
yes,
your life, and then you don't have to put up a mask for them.
yes. And that's all good advice once you've done the work to stop being such an obnoxious person, which I had to do. That's the
Yep.
thing. Just being myself early on wouldn't have done the trick. It would have, I still would have had these selfish traits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like we, it's a hard juggle to make when you've got so much connectivity on a superficial level,
Yeah.
but to actually get deep relationships that are meaningful
Yeah.
with people that actually want the best for you as opposed to just want what's best for them through you.
Yeah.
That's a hard line to
Yeah.
cross to figure out where that line exists. And it's not getting any easier, but I feel like it's all the more necessary for us to like seek out meaningful relationships and actually be present, like you were saying. I mean, so many
Yeah.
people go through life in this complete state of, you know, neglect for everything around them. And I think for me, having kids, like having a 3-year-old and a 3-month now, it's like it's blatantly obvious if I'm not 100% present with them. And when that's brought to the forefront of my attention, it's okay, where else in my life can I be more present? And then
Yeah.
everything improves.
Yeah. That's lovely. I'm so happy for you to have those two kids. What a lovely age it is too. for me, having kids really helped me get out of myself,
Yeah.
and was a great blessing in my life, even though it happened in a very sort of disorganized way. And I would have rather have had my life more together first. It helped me get my life together very quickly. And I'm very grateful for them. I just love my kids. I can't wait till they have kids. I can't
Yeah.
wait.
Well,
I
having
love them.
kids and having meaningful relationships, even if they're
Yeah.
not kids or a significant other, it's like it it forces you to be less selfish in life. And I think so many people are struggling with a lack of happiness or sense of purpose, or even knowing who they are, because they're so selfish that they don't see that the point to life is to serve others, and whatever you can do to
Yeah.
leave the world a better place than you found it and provide more value than you take, that is the calling of life. And the moment you
Yeah.
start doing that, you find more internal happiness as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have been programmed against that idea. And I see their comments mixed in there. They think I'm wrong, but that's fine. Do what you're doing. So you get the results you get. But this absolutely changed everything for me. And I didn't think it was true. I thought it was some sort of platitude about serving other people. I was terrified I would lose myself in other people. When my husband and I got married, we were advised separately, individually, go like do everything you can to lift up your spouse and like live it, it's a service position to be married to them. And I remember first I was like, what are you trying to do? I was all guarded about it. I was happy to know he was told the same thing, but it's totally true. The marriage only works when you trust that you married somebody who you trust can have your best interests in heart, and you're capable of setting aside the momentary anger or blame that's going on in here, and remember, oh, I really want my husband to be happy. I really want him to feel safe in the relationship. I never want him to feel threatened. I'm so
Mhm.
sorry for everything I've ever done that like crossed that line, that would do that. And that when I'm coming from that place, our problems can be worked out in a flash, not these long conversations that I used to have in relationships.
Yeah.
And yeah, just that go in circles. It's just circles.
Yeah.
You know what that is? When you go in circles, it means you've misidentified the problem. If you had the right problem, it would be easy to solve. So my old problem used to be, I'm feeling just terrible. I'm feeling like not loved enough, in former relationships. You're doing this to me. Fix it.
Mhm.
I will know you did the right thing when I feel better. But the thing is, I had this underlying dysregulation. So no matter what was going on, bad or good, I would feel terrible. I couldn't put myself together. So the tools that I use for re-regulating, they help me. Like I'll come into, I'll get upset about something in the relationship and be like, I've got like 80 things I want to talk to him about. And I'm going to give him the litany. It's going to be really breathless and like, and this and this and this and this. Well, he doesn't respond well to that. It doesn't work. If I can go do my work and I have fear that, he's not doing his part. I'm resentful at him because I have fear that I get stuck with things, and fear this has been my lot in life, and fear I'm just going to grow old and tired, and fear he's going to have all the fun, and I have all this stuff. And then I ask for it to be removed. I ask for a little guidance on like, where am I supposed to be right now? What would you like me to be doing? And then I come to him with a tiny list. It's like, well, it's really just about this one thing, about that decision we made that we're going to have people over when it was a bad night for me. And it's not like all the stuff of my life that he can't fix, no matter how good his intentions are, he can't fix it. So I don't bring that in, and I tend to get a much better response. And I'm not making any guarantees that he always hears everything and responds the way I want. He's his own guy, but he's a lot more likely to hear and care and be able to solve a problem for me if I've done the background work of taking all that old memory stuff off
Yeah.
of it. And it can be done. It can be done, and it changes everything. I have such a message of hope for everybody. This book, I'll show you this book. When we were working on the cover design with my publisher, Hay House, the people who didn't really know me yet, they drew a picture of like a silhouette of somebody slouched over. And I was like, no, this is like, yay, I know
Mhm.
what to do. I know what to do. And they designed this great sunburst of like, yay. It's
That's
a
the thing. Like
visual celebration.
when you
Yeah.
got the message that needs to be out there, I mean, you just feel drawn to shout it from the rooftops. Like when you've been
Yes.
helped, you want to help people. And I guess I go back to that service thing, like you're trying
Yes.
to just offer that value to others, because the world will be a better place if we all get our shit together.
Yes, I think everybody's actually endowed with gifts they're meant to be bringing to the service of the
100%.
world, and what we're feeling right now is their absence. So many people who can't do it right now. Some of them, yeah, well, a lot of it is trauma. Trauma takes things away. If their gift is to be a painter and they're a child and have no paint, there's only so much they can do. So a lot of that goes on. So we help each other. I think if I were to summarize my spiritual approach, it's I need to fulfill everything I'm meant to be, and then I need to turn around and help everybody else do it too.
Yeah.
And we all benefit when people are able to rise up and bring their gifts. And you cannot do it when you're full of all this like resentment and panic, and your nervous system is giving you wrong information. So there's a way to heal. It's all I ever do now. My whole life is just about like trying to help people learn this.
Yeah, no, I am in 100% alignment with that goal. I mean, we all have greatness within us, and it is our life's purpose to figure out how to present it to others, to create
Yeah.
that value and leave the world a better place than we found. And we all have that ability. Like, we all have a unique factor about us that nobody else can replicate. Like, we all have that within us as
Yeah.
individuals, and so much of it is suppressed for whatever reason. Our own thoughts, our own self-sabotage, environmental factors, poor upbringing, a myriad of different things. But like,
Yeah.
it is our responsibility to figure out how to bring that light to the world, because it needs to be had.
Yeah. Yeah. It needs to be had. And I've never felt happy until I was using it.
Love
Never
it.
felt really happy.
And the book's out now, or is it about to be out?
It's out. Yeah, it's out. Connectability. You can
Awesome.
get it on online booksellers everywhere. And if you have a local bookstore that's pretty good, they might have it too.
Very good. Very good. Where do people go to find out about you and dive into your YouTube channel?
My YouTube channel is called Crappy Childhood Fairy. And yeah, that's my name. Don't wear it
Nice.
out. And it's the same. My website is crappychildhoodfairy.com. And I have a lot of free tools over there, courses, coaching, webinars, things to do, things that you can do to put your toe in or jump in all the way and start learning how to re-regulate and bring your life to fruition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anna, well, you're fighting the good fight. Unfortunately, there is a massive need for what you're having to do, but I'm glad you're the one that's taking the reins and
Thank you.
and making a dent in it. So keep fighting the good fight for sure.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, Anna.
You too.